was good at it, and it was like a zone of excellence of mine, but my zone of genius is actually the strategic thinking and the coaching. So I decided, okay, screw it. I'm going to do it. And so that's how I've ended up where I am now. And I, through that process, also realized the people that I wanted to work with. So I want to work with creatives.
Welcome to the Digital Hive podcast, where we talk all things digital marketing for small businesses. On this episode, I spoke with Hollie Arnett of Maker and Moxie about marketing her brand strategy and coaching business. We talk about why she decided to change the brand's name recently, communicating the message to the right people, and community over competition. Maker and Moxie is on a mission to help creators build their brand, share their work, and own their Moxie. Hollie provides coaching, strategy, resources, and events that help creatives find clarity and take action so they can build a business they're proud of and step confidently into their next level. I hope you enjoy listening to this chat about the whole journey through brand, marketing, and sales. Hi, Hollie. Welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here chatting to you.
Nice. So to start us off, tell us about you and your business.
For sure. So yeah, my name's Hollie Arnett and I am the founder of Maker and Moxie, and we do brand strategy and coaching for creatives. So that's, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but that's us in a nutshell. Yeah.
That's all right. I have plenty of more questions for you about
yeah.
all of it. So you have recently changed the name from Black and White Studios to Maker and Moxie. Tell us about kind of like the reasoning behind that shift and like how you kind of came to that conclusion.
Yeah, for sure. So I started my business about 4 or 5 years ago very quickly, and I chose a name quickly that would work. And at the time I was doing hand lettering and typography design. That's what my business was. Obviously it's changed a lot since then. So Black and White Studios kind of made sense because I was a typography studio and I focused on, like, my personal work was all basically black and white, like very minimal black and white design, and yeah, it worked. It was something that was very quick and did the job, but I never really fully loved it, and there were a few reasons why I realized we needed to change. One is that the whole time since then I've always been like tagged in things about like black and white photography. There are a lot of other businesses called Black and White something, like there's a whole coffee company in New Zealand called Black and White Coffee, and there's another studio just opened up somewhere in Auckland, I think, called like Black and White Design Studios or something like that, photography studios or something. So it's always getting tagged in like other people's things or things to do with black and white photography, which is not related to what I did at all. But also what I actually do has shifted a lot. Who I work with has shifted a lot. Like the clarity on the transformation that we provide and the impact that we want to have and the vision that we want to have has all changed so much. And so Black and White Studios didn't speak to any of that anymore. It wasn't aligned with the vision for where we're going. Didn't speak to anybody in particular at all. It didn't really feel like the vibe or the energy that we have as a company, and yeah, it just wasn't aligned with any of those things. So it wasn't like a split decision that I decided I needed to change, but just over the years it's become more and more clear that it needed to change, and it just reached a point where like it actually felt like it was stopping us from moving forward and stepping into like our vision and the future for Maker and Moxie. So yeah, that's why it's all changed.
I feel like for me, like the thing that became for me synonymous with your brand was actually orange. So I always I would like obviously remembered the business name, but like whenever I saw anything on social, it was the orange that made me know it was you. So it was like, but that carries through, right? You've kept that completely, and in a way it almost like suits the new name better in a way, like it perfectly translates, which like as much as a color can do, it's like I guess it's kind of like Tiffany blue in a way of like,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully
Yeah.
nobody else is stealing your exact orange because that would annoy me. So,
I hope not. But I think like that is, testament to the power of like branding. Not that I'm trying to convince anybody of like my job, but color does influence like recognition, or increases it up to like 80%. And so many people recognize me just like you do from that color orange. And when I asked people what they thought the name was going to change to, they said, is it going to be something to do with orange, or is it going to be like Pink and Orange Studios or something like that? Because it has become so synonymous, which I think helped with the name change, because like you said, like the colors and the design has all stayed the same. It's just the name that's changed, that which has made it a lot easier, I think.
yeah. So your offerings changed a bit over the years, because I've literally been following you for, I would say, wait, how long have you been in business? Like
3,
4
years, 4.5, I think.
Yeah, so I think I've been following you for like at least 3. And I think at the start you were offering more like services and that typography kind of work. Mm-hmm. So how did you transition to what you're doing now? Like how did that morph over time, and how did you land on your kind of like what you love the most?
Yeah, so I started, as I said, doing typography and lettering, because that's, and still is, something that I really love. Like when Maker and Moxie is like up and running and is like, living on its own without me, I want to go back and be able to just be an artist, and that's my dream. But anyway, so I started off doing typography and lettering, which led me to doing hand-lettered logos, because people were always like, oh, can you hand-letter my logo? Can you design my logo for me? And as I was doing that, I realized, well, actually you can't just do the logo. The logo doesn't exist, or you can't really do a successful brand without everything that comes with a logo, like colors, fonts. You need a full suite of logos, not just one, like everything. And then through that process, I was already kind of doing like brand strategy as I was doing that, but not charging for it as a separate thing. It was just included in the branding process, because you kind of have to do some version of it in order to get a successful brand. And so I realized, okay, this is actually what I really, really love. And I did a course. I went through a course that recommended doing the Strengths Finder test. And I had already been thinking about doing just brand strategy, but I was a little bit scared of doing that. And the Strengths Finder test, which I had done in the past, but I redid it, highlighted that actually my strengths are in strategic thinking and relationship building, not in execution and not in influence. And so I realized, like, actually what I'm really good at and what I love to do and the impact that I want to have all align with, which is the things that make up like your purpose, all align with being a brand strategist and a coach, because I had always just loved more of the big picture thinking, helping somebody turn their idea or their dream into a reality, coaching them through setting all of that up and kind of cheerleading them along the way and helping them realize that it's possible and all of that great stuff, rather than actually moving the pixels around and designing the logos and stuff like that. Like, I was good at it, and it was like a zone of excellence of mine, but my zone of genius is actually the strategic thinking and the coaching. So I decided, okay, screw it. I'm gonna do it. And so that's how I've ended up where I am now. And I, through that process, also realized the people that I wanted to work with. So I want to work with creatives. That's who I am. As you know, I'm an artist, and I have done all the things that artists do, like try to get into exhibitions, being at markets, like all of that stuff. And yeah, they were my favorite clients to work with, and I had kind of sort of been falling down the trap of like working with people who I thought I should be working with, but then I realized, nah, that's not for me. Creatives are my people. That's where I'm at. So yeah, and I think how I've been able to transition that is just by being good at brand strategy. Like, I've been able to transition my positioning and help grow what people know me for. So that in each of those stages, people knew me as the thing that I was doing. So it made it, easier to transition because I have that ability to build that like recognition and, people remembering what I do.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe walk us through each of the different ways that people can work with you, because I feel like that will help people to understand how you kind of go about your marketing, is to kind of understand what you're marketing first.
Yeah, for sure. So I have my signature service is a one-on-one brand strategy. And you can either do that as just the strategy or the strategy plus 3 months coaching afterwards. And then I also have one-off coaching sessions. So for people who are like, I just want to talk to you for an hour about this part of my strategy or whatever. And then I have products. So I have resources that are at a lower price for people who want to DIY or just do a certain part of their branding. And then this last quarter, I also just ran for the first time a group version of my strategy. So that's kind of a newer thing that I've run once and will be running again in September. So that's my suite. I have one-on-one services, group services, and then products.
Yeah, so it's I mean, in a way, it's kind of like the same. It's all based around the same thing, but it's different delivery that works for people, either with like the way that they work or how their budget is as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My mission is always to make like branding as accessible and achievable for anybody, no matter like where you're at or what resources you have. Like branding can be people are a little bit like, you have to invest like thousands for it to, and work with a brand strategist for it to be valid or good. That's not what I believe. So I'm like, no, we can make it work, and I can help you out as much as I can with the budget that you have and the resources and the time that you have available. So that's why I have kind of a suite of options.
Yeah. So walk us through like how you market the business as a whole, both online and offline.
Yeah. So offline has been a little bit more difficult lately. But I used to be very, very active in like the local creative community. I used to run Design Assembly, which was a organization that ran events for designers and all around the country. So I would go and run those events, right? So I built quite a good network from that. I connected with all the speakers that I got to come and talk at the events and things like that, and the attendees and everybody involved. So that was really helpful in terms of offline. I've always been a big fan of like going to events and giving back to the creative community. Like I always go back and speak at my university because I'm still in the same city that I studied in. So I go back and teach, and I go back and speak, and I spoke at creative mornings and things like that. So I just love being involved in local events and communities and things like that. And I think that's a really great way to market indirectly by just growing that network. And then online, I think I do a lot of things online, but I primarily focus my attention on Instagram as my kind of short form or like micro content on Instagram. And then I have a blog and a podcast, which is the same content but written and audio, and a newsletter. And so those are kind of my main focuses. And then sometimes I dabble in, like I uploaded a couple of videos to TikTok just to see what would happen. And I tweet about when a podcast episode comes out, but I don't like focus my attention on those. And yeah, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into in terms of like how I market on those platforms. But I guess those are the ones that I focus on is, Instagram for like micro content, and then my macro stuff is the podcast and the blog posts.
How do you plan everything? Do you sit down and kind of like do everything all at once, or is it like off the cuff kind of content?
The macro stuff is very planned. So I work with a SEO content strategist, and she every quarter goes through my website analytics and looks at like what I'm ranking for or what I need to be ranking for or how we can improve or topics that she thinks would help. And then I go through those and figure out like what ones I want to use, what ones I don't want to use. I think about what things I have coming up, like if I have a launch coming up and I want to do podcasts around that topic, like the name change, for example. We did podcast episodes about changing your name, things like that. And then I have a podcast manager, so I have to be quite organized with that. So that is all very planned. So we have like a master document that is planned in advance, like what episode is going to be coming out on what date, and it's planned like a quarter in advance. We plan that basically a quarter at a time. The micro stuff like on Instagram is a lot more like off the cuff. I more plan that like weekly or monthly at a push. I'm not very good at like planning in advance other than big things. So like for big campaigns or big launches, then I can plan sort of more in advance, or I have sort of recurring things that happen that I know are going to happen every week or every month, like series that I do, or promoting the podcast is going to come out every week, that kind of thing. But otherwise, I basically plan all the other content the week of when it comes out.
Who are you thinking of like a target audience when you're doing all of this, or do you have like a specific person in mind? How do you kind of approach who you're creating for?
Yeah, so I definitely have a very clear target audience. My target audience is like creators and makers who are trying to build their creative business. And like I said, because I have been that person, I often am thinking, what would I want to know? Like if I think about me starting out as a hand lettering artist, I'm like, flipping, what did I need to know? What was I thinking about? What was I panicking about? What was I feeling unsure about? What did I need help with? That kind of thing. But then I also think about like the clients that I've worked with, because all the clients I've worked with as a brand strategist have been ideal clients of mine. So I just have kind of them in mind. And as a brand strategist, I have a target audience or a avatar or whatever you want to call them about my target audience. So I have kind of that in mind as well as I'm creating.
Once you shifted to the strategy, has that person kind of like refined over time, or have you always had that same kind of avatar of essentially like your younger self?
No, it's changed over time, because when I was designing, I was basically designing for anybody. I was just like, anybody who needs kind of my style of design or wants to work with me and likes my work, then fine. But now I'm a lot more like selective, or have, much more clearer idea of the kind of person that I want to talk to. So it's changed in that way, I guess.
So you spoke about having a podcast producer and an SEO and content strategist. Outside of that, do you have any other people helping you? How do you manage all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so up until I would say 6 months ago, was doing everything myself. And then I had a realization that if I want to go anywhere and grow and actually have some kind of like personal life, I need to start outsourcing, which was scary but very good. So I kind of went all in, and I was like, everybody take everything away from me. So I have the podcast manager. So I used to have just an editor. They just edited the podcast, and then I still was doing a lot of the like scheduling or blog post writing and caption writing, like everything. But now I have a full manager, so they do everything. I just do the then promoting on Instagram and newsletter and everything. SEO content person does that quarterly, so that's them. And then I have a VA who does 5 hours a week for me, a virtual assistant. So that's just, she does a lot of admin things, a lot of like project management things, just keeping things on track. Like I said, execution is not actually a great skill of mine, and so she's very good at like following up with me and making sure I'm doing things and stuff like that, because I just get off in like visionary land. And then I also have a designer who just does like ad hoc things for me here and there. So she designs like graphics for the podcast. If I'm creating a resource, she'll help me put that together. Creating graphics for Pinterest, like things like that. She just does little things along the way that we need. And that's it.
Yeah. So that's like your ongoing team, right? Because you had someone helped you with your website, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, he did, when I redesigned the website, so I designed it and then he built it in Webflow for me.
Oh, cool.
And then if I need updates that I can't do myself, a lot of it I can do myself, but there are some things like if we need to build anything brand new, then I go back to him to get him to do that. But yeah.
There when you need them.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Alrighty. So with your service of brand strategy, and then you have kind of the coaching, how do you balance communicating about both in your marketing? Or do you just kind of communicate about the overall like common parts and then people kind of pick a path once they get to your website? How does that work?
I try and communicate both things separately now and again. So like I just try and change it up so that people can get the full picture, I guess. So I'm not always talking about the whole thing. Like sometimes I'll talk about the power of like having coaching after you've done a strategy. Sometimes I'm just talking about like why strategy is really helpful, or what part of strategy will help you in your business. Like I'm talking about different bits, I guess. And then when people either talk to me about working with me or they are on the website, that's when they can sort of decide which is best for them, I suppose. And I have, information on the website and talk to them about the benefits of both when I'm talking to them one-on-one, I guess, if they're weighing up both options. And coaching, I guess, can also be added on afterwards. So some people don't think they need it at the beginning and then go through the process, and then they're like, oh, actually, I think I want to keep going with you and have your support for longer. So then that's when it kind of comes through. But I talk about both kind of as equally as I can. And for me, they sort of come hand in hand anyway, because as I'm doing my strategy process, like we have a Slack channel where we're talking and I'm coaching them all the time. So even as I'm working away on their strategy, they can ask me questions or we can talk about stuff as we're going along. So they're very intertwined for me anyway. And I just am kind of a natural coaching along the way kind of person. But yeah, so it's a bit of a balance, I think, of talking about them both through my marketing. Yeah.
So going back to your email marketing, how do you approach that? Is it kind of like when people subscribe, they go through a sequence, or do you have like the newsletter kind of thing, or do you do like both? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so I have both. So anytime anybody signs up to anything of mine, they will go through a welcome sequence that's like tailored to whatever they've signed up to. So it's different depending on whether they've signed up to like my checklist or my challenge. They get a different welcome. And then after that, they'll just be added to like the newsletter, my general, I guess, list. And I try to email my list every week as in kind of like a newsletter format. And then I will just do additional emails if there's sort of a launch or an event or something big happening. Then I'll do more of a separate campaign. But yeah, basically a bit of both. Well, everybody gets a welcome and then everybody gets the newsletter. And then if I'm launching, I will just target certain segments mostly. So either people who have already shown interest in a certain offer or have downloaded, like, say I'm launching something related to brand strategy, they might have already bought the products that I have that are like the mini DIY versions. So I can sort of segment those people.
How long is your welcome sequence?
Oh, off the top of my head, I think it's like the one for my checklist is, I think, like 3 or 4 emails, and probably over the space of a week maybe. So there's like an initial like, hey, thanks for downloading. This is what you've downloaded, and like hit reply to tell me like what you want to learn about brand strategy or why you've signed up. And then I have, I think, an additional bonus that I send them. And then, yeah, a couple more emails, I think, after that.
If you're launching, do you stop the people in the welcome sequence from seeing the launch content? Or is it kind of just like, if you see it, you see it?
I remove people who are currently in a welcome or like onboarding sequence, because I don't want them to be bombarded. I'm like, you're already going through this sequence. That's enough for you. And then like they'll get the newsletter, I think, anyway. So if I'm promoting something and it's included in the newsletter, they'll see it that way. So I'm not, bombarding them with everything all at once.
If you're listening to this episode and wondering how you can market your own business, I might just have the solution for you. The Marketing Apiary is the one-stop shop course for digital marketing, teaching you everything you need to know to be seen, make sales, and grow your business online. With videos across honing your vulnerability, putting your best foot forward, getting the numbers straight, helping people find you, content marketing, growing with advertising, and passing the torch to your team, we cover every platform and angle you can approach marketing through a process I call the 7 stages of sweet marketing. Since DIYing everything alone and molding everything for your business can bring up a lot of questions and maybe some decision fatigue, we have Q&A calls every 2 weeks so you can submit your questions and receive answers customized for your business from me, even if you can't attend those calls live. To find out more, you can pause the episode and go to themarketingapiary.com or find the link in the show notes once you're done listening. For now, let's get back to the episode. So with the podcast and the blog, do you have almost like, maybe not like a funnel, but like how do you usher people towards, say, like the next step from one piece of content through to maybe like closer to that sale?
Yeah, so with the podcast, we just include like call to actions in the show notes and description and everything. And that then gets people to download the opt-in, and we use a specific opt-in depending on what the podcast topic is. So it's like I have a few different opt-ins, so we just choose the most relevant one. And then so that gets them into the funnel, and then each blog post kind of has a similar system. So at the bottom of the blog post or throughout the blog post, it will either have like a banner that links to an opt-in, or at the bottom there'll be a form, like an embedded form in the blog post, so they can sign up to that, and the same thing. So it's not, I'm usually not trying to get them straight from the free content to a paid thing. It's normally like, okay, you've enjoyed this free, like ungated content that's just out there in the wild, then you can come, if you want to download my opt-in, and then you can come and hang out with me in my emails, and then hopefully, then that will lead to them coming and working with me.
Do you have any idea of how long in general it takes someone to get from, because there's some patience there, like,
yeah, for sure.
how long it takes someone to get from like first, I guess, I mean, it's different for everyone because it depends on when you're launching.
And also I think people are so different, right? I've listened to a podcast or something recently that I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about how some people are like fast action takers. And I'm one of these people. Like if I find somebody, say I'm Googling like SEO, for example. Not that I would do this because I already have a great SEO person, but say I'm looking, like Googling SEO, and I find this person who has a great resource, and then I start browsing their website, and then I say, oh, they have this course that seems perfect for me. I'm like, cool, done. So I'm probably one of those people who they're like, whoa, where did Hollie come from? And I think that happens, to me sometimes. There's people where I'm like, whoa, they just found me, they hopped on, they downloaded the freebie, and now they've like bought my offer or whatever. But then there are people who I know who have been on my list for like years. And then eventually they're like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to work with you. Or people have told me that they, excuse me, have me like on their vision board, which is just honestly the sweetest thing. I think a couple of people have said this to me, and it just made me so emotional. But like those are people who it's going to take longer. And they're like, I know I'm going to work with you eventually, but it just takes longer. So there's different people have different like buying and learning styles. I think some people are like, yep, just give me that now, you seem great. Some people are like, no, I need to think about it for a lot longer and process. That's why you'll get people who will buy on day one of a launch and people who will buy like last minute.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I feel like I'm like, I will sign up, I won't wait like forever long, but I'll follow for long enough that I can almost like check that someone is like consistently talking about the same thing that I initially connected with, so that wasn't just like maybe like a throwaway comment that I like really jived with, but then the rest of what they talk about maybe wasn't.
That makes
but I make
sense.
that decision of like, who really quickly, but then I follow them.
Nice. I'm very like just in time learner, so I don't like follow somebody really or like buy something from them that I'm not gonna use like now. I will just be like, okay, right now I'm focused on Pinterest, and I'm gonna go and find somebody who's good at Pinterest. So I just am a bit more like right now.
And you know what you want before like you're actively deciding to look for something rather than like, so and so is quite persuasive, so now I feel like I need Pinterest. Yeah. Nice. So then would you say that the brand name shift has probably been your most recent launch?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of still in it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been, 2 weeks today? 2 weeks today. So, still transitioning a lot of back-end things over, like Google Drive folders and emails and things like that. But, that's been my most recent launch. And I think before that must have been either my shop or the group program. Yeah.
Nice. So walk us through kind of how you approach the launch, because you've talked about it on your podcast. I imagine there's been some email stuff happening, and then you've been on it on social, like you kind of like teased it and then announced kind of a thing. So how have you kind of approached communicating that and actually actioned it? Like walk us through your launch a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted it to be I guess I didn't want to just announce right away like the name's changing and here it is, because I felt like that would be very kind of jarring for me, but also for like my audience, right? I wanted it to be sort of a seamless change. So I wanted to warm people up to the fact, like, so at the beginning I said something big is happening, and I got people to like guess what they thought it was and things like that. Fun stuff. Then I think a week later I said, okay, the name is changing. Guess what you think the name is? Because I wanted to sort of ease people into the change, I guess, and bring people along for the journey so that it would be like a fun thing that we're all involved in and everybody could get behind, I guess. So week 2, I was like, okay, the name is changing. And then a week later, I said, here's the new name. And I did that primarily on Instagram and my email newsletter. So that was, just done basically through those I did weekly emails about it, and I did like weekly announcements on Instagram, and then in between I was like teasing stuff or showing like, hey, I'm working on the new thing, or getting people to guess what they thought the name was or things like that, to keep people engaged, I guess. And then when it launched, like the name launched, I planned a whole week of name related content. So I created Instagram content because I wanted it to sort of also be like a learning or teaching opportunity, because now that I've been through this name change process, I can share that experience and that process with anybody else who might be thinking about going through that process or will in the future, or needs to just come up with a name in general. So I planned content about like how you know when you need to change your name, whether to use your business name or your personal name. So that was on Instagram, and then we did 2 podcast episodes across that week. So one was like an interview with me. Normally I interview people, but I got my friend Amy to interview me about like my journey and how we got to here, kind of the stuff I talked to you about earlier. And then a podcast episode that was more educational. So both of those also came out on the blog and got shared through the email. And then I randomly got asked to be on the ConvertKit podcast to talk about it as well. So that was a good like bonus launch week treat. So that was essentially the plan, just kind of a phased approach that was kind of easing people in. I could create content in each sort of phase that gradually revealed more and more, and then we launched.
Yeah, awesome. I feel like I was kind of like brought along for the journey, even though, I mean, there was a lot, I imagine, in the back end that went on before you did that first, like, something big's happening. But, like, you feel like you've kind of gotten the behind the scenes peek of, like, and, like, brought along for a journey with just, like, what was essentially 2 weeks' notice. Like,
exactly.
When you will have been working on it for a long time.
You got all the fun parts of it.
Yeah.
We got all the admin related things, but yes. I did an Instagram live as well and talked a lot about like all the admin stuff that went on behind the scenes, so that people knew like this has been going on for a while and this is everything that you have to do if you're going to change your name. So
yeah, I did think of a couple extra things there. So one, I noticed that like when you go live on Instagram and that kind of thing, you're doing it at what is essentially like afternoon or evening New Zealand time. Do you have any kind of strategy there on who your audience is in terms of, are they based in New Zealand, Australia versus the US? Do you have any kind of, because I focus on the morning, but
so I have tried a bunch of different times. So I think either like later, or my Instagram insights says that like 9 a.m. is when everybody is active. Every time I posted at 9 a.m, flop. Nothing. Like super quiet. So I'm like, okay, weird, but okay. And then I have started mostly have been posting in the evenings and at like 8 o'clock New Zealand time, and it's done way better. And I think that's because, in my mind, so Maker and Moxie is like global. Obviously I'm based in New Zealand, but we have a lot of like audience members in the US or in the UK, or obviously in Australia as well. So in my mind I'm like, okay, 8 o'clock is like evening time for New Zealanders. We're all scrolling, sitting on the couch scrolling. It's about 6 o'clock for Australia, so people have finished work. They, again, can be scrolling. And then it's sort of like very early morning for the UK. So that means that when people are waking up in the morning, they're scrolling. And then I don't have any idea what time it is for the US, but it seems to be a good time. So like I have used, I guess, like the analytics you're supposed to use, but they haven't actually resulted in the results that I would expect. So it's just been a lot of trial and error. And 8 o'clock for me seems to be about the right time. So I just try and post around there, and it seems to be good. And also, like, I guess practically it's a good time for me because my partner streams in the evenings. So if he's streaming, then I can be posting, or I can be on Instagram Live in another room. So it works out practically for me to do it then too.
Yeah, with the podcast going live, I had to look into all the different timings, and like I actually went based off of how it would sit in the new latest episodes rollout of Apple Podcasts, and what worked for my schedule in terms of, because I'm the person that like wants to visually see it go live to make sure it went live, because I don't want to be posting about it on social and then people can't even like access the episode. So I posted something at 5 p.m. yesterday, and then kind of thought I saw a few people liking it, and then I was like, go to bed, you're in the States. But then I realized they're on the other side of the States, so it was probably 10 p.m. rather than like 12:30 at night. So that was funny, because kind of with that I was like, I need to like pick a time and then stick to it for that, knowing that it needs to be for me more, because people will just listen to the podcast when they want to listen to the podcast. Like there's no, I mean, there's an algorithm in terms of discover, but there's not an algorithm in terms of listening to a podcast.
I think our podcast goes out at night, like 8:30, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But I don't promote it until later on.
Yeah.
But people who are subscribed, or like the email goes out at 9 a.m. for people who are subscribed to the podcast specific email. And if you follow the podcast on Spotify or iTunes, you're going to get it immediately. But yeah, I just promote it later on.
Yeah. And then the other question I had was around YouTube, because for a while there you were doing like weekly vlogs, which I loved. And did you kind of feel like because you're not doing those anymore, right? I haven't just like missed
Not at
something.
the moment, no.
Yeah. Did you find that with like stories and that kind of content that you were kind of sharing some of that content there, like on stories instead?
There was a little bit of like crossover for sure. It also so the reason that I stopped was just a practicality. So the editor I had before did audio and video, so she edited both for me at the same time, including the vlogs. But the editor I have, or the manager I have now, just does audio. And I hate editing video with a passion. It's just not how my brain works. And I did it for a very long time before I had a podcast editor. Like I've made videos all the way, you can go back on my YouTube channel all the way back to like when I started uni, or like the middle of uni. So I edited videos for a long time and I don't enjoy it. So I was like, unless I can pay somebody else to edit the videos for me, which that's not my priority right now, then I'm not going to make those videos. But I do love it. And I'm also, I guess, with the name change before the name change, there was a bit of, I guess, confusion about what I put on like a personal page versus a business page. And like at the moment, my YouTube channel is Hollie Arnett TV. Because there's, like I said, like there's stuff from way back when I was at uni, so it doesn't make sense really for it to be under Maker and Moxie, but then there's educational stuff that would make sense to be there, so it's just a bit of a mess at the moment. So I think I would need a clearer strategy if I was to do that again. But I think there was a bit of crossover between, I guess, Instagram stories and filming the vlogs. I think it would be fine now because I have a bit more of a distinction on my stories. Like I don't share as much personal, like day to day what I'm doing behind the scenes stuff. It's more very like, here's what Maker and Moxie is working on right now, or like, more business specific. So there would probably be a bit more delineation there, I think, now.
Has there been other parts of like the marketing sphere of business that you've kind of decided weren't working in your favor, or you didn't love and decided to move on from?
Yeah, I used to have a Facebook group, like a free Facebook group. That was like a marketing thing that was highly, highly recommended in a course, like a mastermind that I did. Their whole thing was like, okay, get people added into a Facebook group, provide value there, and then like upsell them onto whatever you're doing next. And I was like, I don't like this. Like, I'm having to, I guess, like post in there all the time, try and keep like conversations going and stuff like that. And I don't like Facebook anyway. It's not really where like I think a bunch of my audience hang out. It's not my favorite like UI to use and things like that. So I just was like, I don't want to do this. So I closed the Facebook group probably a year or so ago. So yeah, that was one that I didn't love, but I tried it, and like I did get quite a few people in there because I ran a challenge and had my opt-in leading there and stuff, but it just wasn't for me. Yeah, there's probably been a lot of other things, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's that thing of just because you start doing something doesn't mean that you have to do it forever, like while that feature is available. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have gone on to something like Clubhouse and then have potentially like, not struggles, probably a bit extreme, but like had to find that balance of when, like, I want to get on this early, but does that mean I need to then commit to it for the next 24 months? Yeah.
I think it's also like knowing that A, yes, you can quit something if you aren't enjoying it, but also B, you don't have to start something if you don't want to. Like I did it, like I made an account on Clubhouse just so that my name was saved or whatever, but I was like, I don't need to be on there. It's not like I have enough going on. And there were a lot of other reasons why I didn't get on there, but like, yeah, just being okay with like, okay, I don't need to be there, you know? Just because a lot of other people are over there doesn't mean I have to. And also Clubhouse has kind of died now anyway, so I feel okay with not being on there.
Yeah, I was gonna say Twitter almost tried to do. I think that was what Twitter Fleets was, if I'm remembering correctly. And I googled it the other day and found out they cancelled it. Like within 3 months or something, they'd completely shut it down because people weren't.
That was Fleets was their like stories equivalent.
Oh, and yeah, that was it.
They also had Spaces, which I think they still have, but it's not very highly used. But yeah, it was exactly the same like audio hangout thing. Even the UI, like the layout of it was all the same. It was very weird.
Yeah, I wonder if one day Clubhouse will be acquired and then
possibly
integrated. But yeah, it's funny. Like no feature is exclusive to any one platform. They can all poach everything from the others.
Stealing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So with all of that, what you're doing now and what you've done in the past, what do you think has been the most effective in marketing your business?
Great question.
And it doesn't have to be like Instagram. It could be like an approach that you've done to something or anything like that. It doesn't have to be a platform as such, but how do you think that that's been the most effective for you in the past?
I think the things that have been the most effective for me in marketing my business is having a very relational or relationship based approach to marketing. I know people say this all the time, but I am so about like community over competition. I do not care how many other branding people are out there. Like I will work with them, and I do. Like I have a series on my Instagram where I get a bunch of women who are branding specialists to come together and talk about a topic every month. And I love doing that because I have many opinions, but there are like a lot of men who are the same like branding men who get put on conferences and things like that all the time. So I love bringing together people who don't always have an opportunity to talk, or I think who are incredible and really smart and talented and have a lot to offer. So I love bringing them together. We get to share like all of our knowledge collectively with our audiences. We get to collaborate on stuff. And I think like that's always been my approach, is like just give and give back and collaborate with each other and be very relationship based. And you know, things like hopping on your podcast, I love doing stuff like this because we get to connect. Like I can share your podcast, you can share my story. Like there's so much good that comes out of things like this, and I think that's always just been my approach, is like, how can I try and help these people? How can I how can we help each other? How can we share each other's stuff or just cheer each other along? Like I'm always in people's stories replies with the like fire emoji or things like that, you know, just cheering people on and being friends with people on the internet. So I think, and like I said, like I always love doing that in person as well at events and stuff, but that's obviously less doable in today's current situation. So I just am loving doing that online as well, and that's always, I guess, been my approach, is like just give as much as I can, give back as much as I can, go back to my uni, write stuff about branding for other brands to help them and help their audiences. Like I just want to make connections and friendships and relationships, and they cheer me on, I cheer them on. It's all just a big happy time.
Yeah. It's fun. Like it's just fun to approach it that way. Yeah, for sure.
Like there is so much you know, feelings of like comparison and competition and that kind of stuff can come up on the internet, but I think if you have that like collaboration and community approach, it makes things way more chill, because you're like, nope, there's room for all of us, let's all just hang out and celebrate each other and we can all succeed. So it makes it less stressful.
Yeah, and rather than it being about like how do you get your slice of the pie, it's like how can we make the pie bigger so that there's enough for everyone.
And the pie more equal.
Yes.
Right. How can, like, that's my thing, is like, how can I, instead of this one person getting all the pie, listen, everybody get a piece.
Yeah. Let's take the fence down around the pie.
Yes.
Alrighty, so let's move into the quickfire round. So where do you get the most of your website traffic or sales from?
Website traffic, definitely from my like SEO, my blog.
Yeah. Do you have any stats on your sales, where they come from? If it's the same or
sales through either that or referrals, or like or Instagram. Actually, I do get a lot. Not directly through Instagram, but people follow me on Instagram and then end up in my things. Yeah.
Yeah, slowly in their loop.
Yeah.
Loop around and then eventually they land there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place on the internet right now?
Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to the most in the next year of business?
Ooh, I am just looking forward to like doing what I do and doing it well. I'm not in like a period now of adding new things. I'm done with the new things and like shifting and changing. I'm like, okay, this is where we are. Let's just make this really good.
Nice. What are you looking forward to the most in the offline world?
Ooh, I am very focused right now on like having my own time and like actually having a life outside of my business, because it hasn't been that way for a long time. So I'm having a lot of fun, like just creating for creating's sake. I'm learning to sew. I'm doing a lot of reading. I started like a bookstagram where I can just take photos and be nerdy about books. So I'm just having fun being creative and having fun. Yeah.
Nice. So if someone is listening to this episode and they want to grow their own coaching business or strategy business, what is the one thing you recommend they do next?
Ooh, the one thing I would recommend you do next is to get clear on why you're doing what you're doing and who you're doing it for, and what the kind of result is going to be, and then just share that everywhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Digital Hive podcast. I'm your host, Emma Peacock, and today our guest was Hollie Arnett of Maker and Moxie. If you're in need of your own brand strategy, you can find out more at makerandmoxie.com. There's also a link in the show notes where you can find the ultimate branding checklist. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend or on Instagram and tag us at Honeypot Digital. To find out more about Honeypot Digital and the work we do, or to find more episodes of the podcast and handy tips for small businesses marketing online, head to honeypotdigital.com.